Welcome to the audio version of Conjured BTS, a BTS fanfiction by Zmelio. Episode 1, The Sorcerer. Swish, 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 a cloaked figure raced from one table to another. Candlelight flickered in the dark corner of the abandoned library where the sorcerer attempted another experiment. This one wasn't merely practice. He had studied enough. Now he hoped he was prepared for the spell that actually mattered. It was vital this one succeeded, and how would he know? When the two elements merged. If that happened, maybe that's all he needed. Just once. Maybe that would do. If not, he could do it again and again and, well, one spell at a time. He finished the red, and now time was of the essence. He rushed to complete the blue. Back to the spell book, back to the potion. Hands shaking, ingredients mixed, incantation spoken. He swirled the flask. Was it too viscous? It barely moved. He set it down. He paced. He looked back at it. A few drops of solvent, he thought. It had to be just right. He stirred it again and was satisfied. He pulled the blue into a syringe with a long needle and laid it on the center table beside the syringe of red. He inhaled deeply as he braced himself for the next step. Before him sat a small aquarium, 2/3 full of purple translucent substance. On top of that was a cloudy purple layer. Streaks randomly sliced through the cloud into the substance. The strongest ones created an air bubble. He ran his finger along the container, searching for the best candidate. He picked one and tapped the glass. He picked up the syringes, one in each hand, and steadied himself. He pierced into the substance with the needles so that they met at the larger bubble. He delicately injected the elements as equally as possible. Slowly, he pulled the syringes away, laid them back on the table, and bent over to watch the result. He rubbed his eyes and gripped the table's edge. "Come on, Army," he muttered. "You believe in magic, don't you?" A tiny bubble formed between the elements, then another and another, until it became a fizz. The colors began to swirl faster and faster until the larger bubble was finally purple. He sighed deeply. "Okay," he nodded. "Now how do I figure out if this worked?" He studied the purple bubble and wrote down some notes. He placed his index finger on his chin and thought, "Do I view the dream or the consequence? Although I want to see how the dream worked. What I really need to know is if anything has changed." He knelt down to open a box under the table and sorted through several ring-shaped objects. He selected a smooth blue metallic ring and returned to standing. He pulled a stand forward on the table and clamped the ring in place. He tilted the ring backwards so he could see through it easily. He picked up an empty syringe and used it to precisely take a drop from the purple. After removing the syringe, he looked up at it and the ring, back and forth with confusion. "How am I supposed to?" he groaned. He set the syringe down and turned to the other table. He rummaged through several containers until he found something that would serve his purpose, a small cotton pad. He stepped back to the syringe and emptied the contents into the pad. He then rubbed the pad around the ring while he recited another incantation. The ring began to glow, and a scene revealed itself. Like looking through a window, he peered into the ring. "Jimin," his voice cracked. His first thought was to grab the ring, but he stopped mid-reach. He clenched his fists and then wiped the air in front of the ring to pause the image. A tightness rose in his chest as he turned away. "I can't do this," he whispered. He looked up to fight the tears. One escaped, and his hand reached up to his face to wipe it away. His hand began to shake. Instead, he grasped the hood of his cloak and pulled it down. He twisted and collapsed to a sitting position on the ground. He growled at himself, at his weakness. After several minutes, he regained his composure with deep breaths and looked back up at the ring. "I have to do this." He pulled himself to standing and stepped up to the ring again. He swiped the air in front of it, and the picture moved. Jimin with blonde hair in a loose-fitting black turtleneck with a green jacket zipped up to the middle of his chest, then stylishly turned out to show a yellow lining. He was looking at someone to his right, and when the ring expanded the scene, Jungkook entered the frame, wearing a similarly styled jacket in purplish blue. Jimin asked Jungkook why they were both dressed like that. The sorcerer wondered the same thing. When was this? The sorcerer questioned. Jungkook only shrugged. Well, what did they say? Jimin inquired further, and was returned another shrug. Is it for the webtoon? Jimin pressed, and Jungkook shrugged again. The sorcerer smiled at them and paused the scene. He pulled the stool out from under the table and grabbed his notes again. The webtoon, Save Me, was released in early 2019, and Seven Fates, early 2021. Their clothes didn't particularly match either series. Maybe Jimin was just grasping at straws? Unpaused, Jimin made another suggestion. Is it a music video? To which Jungkook shrugged again. Jimin looked exasperated. His laughter escaped the sorcerer. What was this? Why wouldn't Jimin know what he was there to do? With his hand to his forehead, Jimin resigned. Where's the director? Jungkook shrugged for the 5th time, and Jimin stared in disbelief. The sorcerer held back more laughter when Jungkook spoke. Sorry, Jiminy Hyung. They said but I was too busy looking at the craft service food. I think it's called chipotle? The sorcerer paused and laughed heartily. He remembered when Jungkook mispronounced the American restaurant name they were filming with James Corden in late 2021, and the Bangtan Bon came out early the following year. Something was not right about this. Things weren't adding up. He tossed his notes aside and reached for his spellbook. Pages flipped. He threw the tome back onto the table. I see, he resigned. Scenes of the past vary from reality in detail, but capture the larger narrative. Plus, the farther away from the targeted subject, the more inaccuracies occur. So let's find Taehyung. He touched the scene in the ring and moved the view to the side, away from Jimin and Jungkook and on to Seokjin and Yoongi in similar rugged jackets. He sighed and motioned to resume play. Why do you have dirt on your jacket? The rest of our outfits are clean, Seokjin questioned, clearly intending to tease Yoongi. The sorcerer imagined stylist rubbing dirt on Yoongi's jacket, but as if he heard the sorcerer's thoughts, Yoongi answered, They didn't do that. I sat down on the ground to work on lyrics, but I fell asleep, and when I rolled over, my jacket got dirty. The stylists haven't said anything. Seokjin folded his arms. You need a better sleep schedule. When I wake up in the middle of the night, and you aren't in our room, I worry. Yoongi broke out into laughter. Good luck with that, he replied. Seokjin snorted. You're a bad roommate. The sorcerer paused, again with a smile, but perplexed. He was decently sure that these events were occurring after they all moved out of a dorm, sometime after the pandemic, but before the break. Groaning slightly, the sorcerer moved the scene over. There he found Taehyung, flanked by Namjoon and Hoseok. Namjoon was wearing a suede green jacket with soft white lapels. Taehyung looked ready for adventure, adorned with extra buckles and straps. Hoseok carried a backpack, looking like he was ready with supplies for a long journey. The sorcerer thought, maybe this action-adventure film wasn't real at all, but a reflection of how he himself was feeling. Hopefully the conversation would be accurate enough to give him answers. He motioned to play. The company has already invested in this plan. It will be hard to tell them no, Hoseok spoke with concern. This was it. Taehyung had learned something from his experience, and he believed it was real, and he was trying to convince them to change the plan. That's my boy, muttered the sorcerer. Taehyung gestured in response. But it will be dangerous. I don't think we should do it. Tell them now before it's too late. Namjoon looked confused. You were excited about this before, Taehyung. What has changed? Taehyung was dejected and questioned himself. Namjoon, just listen to him, the sorcerer called out, as if he would be heard through the reaches of space and time. Taehyung regrouped his thoughts. Let's just say I had a premonition that it will go wrong. The sorcerer cringed. knowing this wouldn't be enough to convince Namjoon to ask the company to change the plan. His head drooped as he heard Namjoon's words. This project could mean a lot, not just for us, but for artists and fans all over the world. It would be hard for me to argue against it based on a premonition. He looked back at the ring to see Hoseok put his hand on Taehyung's shoulder and say, "Let's keep talking about it. We'll get to the bottom of what's bothering you and address it, okay, Taehyung?" "Okay, Hobi-hyung," Taehyung conceded. The frustrated sorcerer leapt to standing. "No, don't give up. No, no, no." He stormed out. The cloak flowing behind him created a stir of air, which caused the printout of an article to flutter to the ground. The headline reads, "Groundbreaking K-pop concert ends in disaster."